Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dive into some critical thinking today?
Always up for that.
Awesome. So we've got like 3 totally different sources to dig into.
Okay.
There's this YouTube video with like super cool visuals, then a checklist that's like crazy practical, and a university resource that gets like seriously in-depth.
Wow. That's quite the mix.
I know, right?
Should be interesting.
Totally. So the YouTube video, it's from Qualia Soup.
Okay.
And they start off by saying learning to think critically is like learning to fish.
Interesting analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but that like totally hooked me.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's a good one. It makes you think about like the long game, right?
Oh, for sure.
It's not just about like catching one fish. It's about developing the skills to like feed yourself for life.
Exactly. Instead of just giving you the answer, they're teaching you how to find the answers yourself.
Exactly. Like no matter what the situation is.
Right. So, okay, what does this fishing for knowledge actually look like? Well, the video really emphasizes that critical thinking isn't just about like thinking harder or longer. It's about thinking smarter. It's about questioning everything, even your own like deeply held beliefs.
Oh yeah, for sure. Have you ever found yourself clinging to a belief even when like all the evidence was pointing in the other direction?
Oh, totally. Like we all have those moments where we're like so attached to our own perspective, even when it might be like totally flawed.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking comes in. It's about being willing to change your mind.
Yeah.
You know, to admit you might be wrong and to be open to new information.
It's like having intellectual humility, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely.
And that ties in really well with the whole skepticism thing that the video talks about.
Yeah, skepticism. When we talk about skepticism, though,
Right. Yeah.
it's not about like dismissing everything outright.
Right.
It's more like saying, okay, hold on. Before I accept this as true, I need to understand the reasoning behind it. Show me the evidence. Show me the logic.
Yeah. It's like suspending judgment until you've really dug into the claim.
Exactly.
Oh, and the video says arguing against reason is like cutting off the branch you're sitting on.
Yeah.
It just like doesn't make sense.
It's like totally undermining your own argument if you're not using reason to support your claims.
For sure. And you know, another critical thinking trap that the video highlights is something we see all the time.
What's that?
Black and white thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Or false dichotomies.
Right. It's like that thing where we oversimplify complex issues.
It's totally. The video uses consciousness as an example. Like we often think it's either we have an eternal soul or it's all just brain states.
Right. But is it really that simple?
Yeah. Couldn't there be a whole spectrum of possibilities in between?
Exactly. We do this all the time, too.
Yeah.
It's like this or that with no room for nuance.
Oh, it's the worst.
I know. And we see it everywhere, especially in like political debates. People get so entrenched in their positions that they forget to even consider other perspectives.
It's like everything becomes us versus them instead of trying to find common ground or acknowledge that like, hey, maybe it's a complex issue.
Totally.
Okay, so how do we break free from this black and white thinking? The Qualia Soup video gives some pointers, but I think our next source, the critical thinking checklist, offers some seriously practical strategies.
Oh, yeah. I love this checklist.
Me too.
It's like a self-assessment for your thought process.
Right. It asks you all these questions that really make you examine your own reasoning. And the best part is it's not just theoretical. Like, you can actually apply this checklist to your work or even just your everyday decisions.
Totally. It's so useful.
Right. It's full of questions like, is your conclusion clear and would you be able to defend it if challenged?
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, right? Like, that's something we should all be asking ourselves.
For sure. It's easy to just state an opinion without really thinking through the reasoning behind it.
Totally.
This checklist makes you think critically and make sure you can back up your claims.
Yes. Another question that really stood out to me was, have you considered opposing viewpoints and why your reasoning might be stronger? I think that's like such a crucial element of critical thinking.
Absolutely. You can't just live in an echo chamber. You have to be willing to step outside your comfort zone and consider alternative viewpoints.
And who knows, you might even discover weaknesses in your own argument or gain new insights you hadn't thought of before.
Totally. It can be really eye-opening.
Okay, so we've got this awesome checklist as a tool. Now let's bring in our final source, the critical thinking article from the Institute for Academic Development.
Cool.
They have a really interesting approach focusing on purposeful reading. They suggest asking yourself these key questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Interesting.
It sounds pretty basic, but I think we often forget to ask these questions.
Yeah, especially when we're like bombarded with information online.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's like information overload.
Totally. So for instance, if you're reading a news article about a new scientific study, think about when that study was conducted. Maybe the findings are outdated, or maybe new research has emerged that contradicts the original conclusions.
Right. Context is everything.
Exactly. You can't just take information at face value. You have to dig deeper and understand the circumstances surrounding it.
For sure. And that's where those questions come in handy. They help you get to the heart of the matter.
Absolutely. And the article also emphasizes how critical thinking helps you move beyond just disagreeing with someone. It's about being able to assess those alternative viewpoints in a constructive way and maybe even learn something from them. I'm curious, when was the last time you had a disagreement with someone that actually changed your mind about something?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. It really makes you think about how we approach disagreements and whether we're truly open to changing our perspectives.
It's so easy to get defensive when our beliefs are challenged, but I think real growth happens when we're willing to listen and engage with different perspectives.
Absolutely. It's all part of that continuous process of learning and refining our understanding.
And that's the beauty of critical thinking, right? It allows us to evolve our thinking and become more well-rounded individuals.
Couldn't agree more.
You know, it's funny because when we talk about critical thinking, we often think about school or work.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's something we need in every aspect of our lives.
It really is.
Yeah.
Think about it. We are constantly bombarded with information.
Seriously, everywhere.
Everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
News articles, social media, advertising, you name it.
Even just casual conversations.
Exactly. And it's not always easy to sort through all that noise and figure out what's reliable and what's not.
Oh, it's so overwhelming sometimes.
It can be. That's where critical thinking comes in. It's like our shield against misinformation and manipulation.
Totally. It helps us filter through all that noise and identify what's actually credible and trustworthy.
Which, let's be honest, can feel like a Herculean task sometimes.
They're telling me. But you know what I think one of the coolest things about critical thinking is how it helps us become more self-aware.
Oh, yeah?
It forces us to acknowledge our own biases.
That's huge.
Yeah.
We all have biases, whether we realize it or not.
Right.
They're shaped by our experiences, our upbringing, our values, and all that. And those biases can definitely color how we interpret information.
Okay, so how do we make sure those biases aren't totally clouding our judgment?
Right.
Because I know I've definitely fallen into that trap before.
Well, the first step is just acknowledging that we have biases. Just that awareness alone is huge.
Yeah.
And then from there, we can start to question our own assumptions.
Yeah.
Actively look for evidence that might challenge our preconceived notions.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own thinking, right?
Yeah.
And being willing to see things from different angles.
Exactly. And tools like that checklist we talked about earlier can be super helpful for this.
Yeah.
It prompts us to ask those critical questions and forces us to consider viewpoints that might be different from our own.
It's not just about being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about recognizing that there might be something we're missing.
You hit the nail on the head. Critical thinking embraces nuance and complexity. It helps us remember that the world isn't black and white.
And that there's always more to learn. It's a journey, not a destination.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thinking back to that fishing analogy from the qualia soup video,
Mm-hmm.
it really drives home this idea of critical thinking as a tool for lifelong learning.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about so much more than just being handed the answer. It's about equipping yourself with the skills to find those answers on your own.
Exactly. When we develop those critical thinking muscles, we become active participants in our own learning. We're not just passively absorbing information.
Right.
We're engaging with it, analyzing it, and forming our own conclusions.
We become independent thinkers, capable of navigating the complexities of the world and arriving at our own understanding.
And that's a powerful thing. But it's not just about flexing our intellectual muscles, right? There's a real-world impact to all of this.
You're absolutely right. Critical thinking isn't just about being a better student or a more efficient worker. It's about being a more engaged and informed citizen.
Oh, that's a great point. When we think critically, we're more likely to question the status quo, to stand up for what we believe in, to demand better from our leaders.
It's about recognizing our responsibility in shaping the world around us and using our voices to advocate for positive change.
I love that. It's like critical thinking gives us the tools to not only understand the world, but to actively participate in it.
And that brings me to something I've been thinking about. We've talked about applying critical thinking to our work, our studies, the information we encounter online. But what about our personal lives? Our relationships?
That's an interesting question. It's almost like we compartmentalize critical thinking, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something we switch on for certain tasks, but not others.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what if we brought that same level of critical thinking to our interactions with loved ones, to the way we handle conflicts, to the decisions we make in our personal lives?
I know, I'm definitely guilty of operating on autopilot sometimes. Just going with my gut feeling or falling back on old habits.
We all do it. But imagine if we could bring that critical thinking lens to those personal situations as well. What if we started questioning our assumptions about ourselves, about our relationships, how we approach personal challenges?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. It's like taking that fishing rod and casting it into the depths of our own hearts and minds.
I love that image, because it's often in those depths that we find our greatest opportunities for growth and transformation.
It's like we're using those critical thinking skills to understand ourselves better, to become more self-aware, to make more conscious choices.
And, it doesn't have to be this heavy, serious thing. Sometimes it's just about taking a step back and asking yourself, why am I reacting this way? Or is there another perspective I'm not considering?
It's like hitting the pause button before we jump to conclusions or make decisions based on emotion.
Exactly. And that pause can make all the difference. It gives us that space to reflect, to analyze, and to make choices that are more aligned with our values.
So it's about bringing that same level of intentionality and thoughtfulness that we apply to our work or studies to our personal lives as well.
Absolutely. And I think when we start doing that, we might be surprised by the insights we uncover and the positive changes that follow.
It's like we're constantly leveling up, right? Not just our ideas, but ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's a journey.
Total journey. Okay, so to our listener out there, I have a challenge for you this week.
Ooh, a challenge.
I like it.
I want you to pick one decision in your life.
Okay.
It can be big or small. And before you make that decision, apply the critical thinking checklist.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. So walk yourself through those questions, really examine your reasoning, and just see what comes up.
You might be surprised.
Totally. I think we make decisions based on habit or emotion way more often than we realize.
Oh, for sure.
But this challenge is all about bringing that conscious awareness to your decision-making process.
Yeah.
Even if it's something small, like what to eat for dinner, it's a great way to just flex those critical thinking muscles.
Exactly. Get those mental reps in.
Yes. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you could even share your experience in the comments.
Oh, yeah.
Let us know what decision you tackled and what insights emerged from applying the checklist.
We'd love to hear about it.
We really would. And of course, we'll have links to all the sources we talked about today in the show notes.
So you can check them out for yourself.
Yes. Because remember, it's not just about absorbing information.
Right.
It's about engaging with it, questioning it, and making it your own.
It's about becoming an active participant in your own learning and growth.
Okay, so to wrap things up, remember what we talked about today. Question everything. Be curious. Be open to new perspectives.
Yeah.
And most importantly, never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive.
Yeah.
Keep those minds sharp, and we'll catch you next time.